earlier thought about PMO in India. And actually, today's title may appear a bit curious to all of you because it says PMO under non-Congress government. So you may be curious why non-Congress government. So actually, I missed the last time lecture, and in that, Dr. Roy has spoken on PMO under Congress government. So it's more like a sequel, and I'm sure that if you, many of you must have heard the first part of series, and second part is today. Those who have missed the first part, they can always go to the website of Nehru Memorial Museum Library and they can find this lecture on there. PMO has always been a very curious word because we were discussing today itself, and actually I have some interest, not especially in PMO, but some kind of thing, that till Jawaharlal Nehru's time, PMO was not all that important, though Jawaharlal Nehru tried his best to establish the superiority of PMO, but at the same time, we should remember that most of the colleagues, cabinet colleagues of Jawaharlal Nehru were co-travelers in freedom fighting. So there was no relationship as such between prime minister and minister, or the ministers have to be kept informed all the time from PMO. Many of the ministers never even informed what they are doing in their ministry, and we know that Sardar Patel was one of them, Rajaji was one of them, or even often Maulana Azad didn't inform much of. They may consult, it's another matter, but not necessarily taking the permission of PMO. But situation changed after Jawaharlal Nehru. With Mrs. Gandhi, PMO became all powerful because the whole equation between Prime Minister and his ministers or her ministers changed. And today in this series, we are going to hear a very important lecture by Himanshu Rao, and I don't want to stand between you and me, you and him. And now mic is to Dr. Roy.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Professor Makhanlal. The Chair himself is a senior fellow here, and that you graced the occasion. This is part of my fellowship, Atal Bihari Vajpayee Senior Fellowship here. Last year, I had presented a paper as a part of this fellowship because my fellowship is on PMO, Prime Minister of India. So it was on the, as the chair introduced himself, introduced the theme on the Congress governments, PMO under the Congress governments, and I had given a long historical trajectory of how the PMO was formed, developed, what Nehru wanted as a grand PMO, almost based on the American presidency kind of model, not on the British PMO, from where this Indian PMO has been inherited. We'll take into account three aspects of this paper today on the non-Congress governments, because this is part of the sequel that I have, the second part of this paper or the research project that I had on the non-Congress governments. So basically, first time we find that after emergency, and you remember on 25th June, if I remember correctly, emergency was imposed approximately 46 years ago. 46 years ago, emergency was imposed, and this is the month of June. And after 18 months, finally, Janata Party, which itself was a combination of four parties, was formed, of which Janasangh was part of it. And then a prime minister is decided by the party. He did not went into the election as a prime ministerial candidate. The way Vajpayee was introduced as a prime ministerial candidate, the way Prime Minister Modi now was introduced by the party as a prime ministerial candidate. He contested the election and the electorate voted for Prime Minister Modi or Prime Minister Vajpayee. Contrary to this, a lot many of the non-Congress governments in India after 77, and for the first time in 77, a Janata Party came into power. Most of them were old Congressy. We all know that this Prime Minister Morarji Desai himself was a part of the Congress government till he resigned or the developments that took place. So in 77, after the emergency, once he took over as the Prime Minister, he changed the nomenclature of the Prime Minister's Secretariat. Earlier it was Prime Minister's Secretariat. It was Morarji Desai who renamed it as Prime Minister Office. The objective was to demean means to keep the profile low, because PMS had become infamous during the emergency. And therefore, as a part of the reaction of that, the name was changed, the nomenclature was changed, and policy unit within it was dismantled, that was removed. Because ethically it was considered as something that how come a PMO has become so powerful? And the trend, as I had said in my last lecture, had begun in 1964 when Sastry was the Prime Minister. If the date I remember correctly, on 16th June 1964, the portrait of, in the book Portrait of Power, Mr. N.K. Singh is writing about that. On 16th June 1964, there was some change in the Prime Minister Secretariat, and Sastry introduced an entirely new administrative thing where the PPS becomes secretary to the Prime Minister. Earlier, he used to be the PPS, to the rank of Joint Secretary. The nomenclature during Nehru's time, let me clarify and repeat it, that it was of Joint Secretary rank and it was called PPS. Sastry changed the rank to the Cabinet Secretary. So two power centers equivalent to the rank of the same officers were appointed, the Cabinet Secretary and another Cabinet Secretary rank in the PMO. But his designation means his nomenclature was Secretary. So this was the first major change that Sastry enacted. And there were multiple of reasons that I won't go here. I have already stated in my first lecture the changes that had taken place. Subsequently, we find that when Mrs. Indira Gandhi took over as Prime Minister, so Haksar, he joined, and then once he retired, he was appointed as Principal Secretary. So the first time the post of Principal Secretary was created for Haksar. This was the another major change in the nomenclature, etc. The secretary was already there. The secretary in the PMO, that was Mr. Dhar, he was there. He was Director, Institute of Economic Growth. And it was Mr. Haksar who had brought him to the PMO, or at that point of time, Prime Minister's Secretariat. This was another major change. And then emergency happened or was declared, and then we find all kinds of the political opponents were put into the jails and all kinds of things that happened that we have put it under discussion in the last lecture that I had from Teen Murthy. So here we find under these circumstances, Morarji Desai thought to change the nomenclature of the Prime Minister's Secretariat. It became Prime Minister Office. Here another interesting fact, and the controversy erupted. He appointed V. Shankar, Vidya Shankar, who was once PS to Deputy Prime Minister Patel in 1947-48. He appointed him as his Principal Secretary. There was opposition from the ministers, and even the president at that time wrote a letter to the Prime Minister not to appoint a retired person as Principal Secretary in the Prime Minister office, because earlier he had joined business houses. So the argument was that he will be privy to the confidential matters. So look at the level of the ethics at that in 1977. But the The Prime Minister then, Morarti Desai, justified that this is the discretionary, this comes within the discretionary purview of the Prime Minister. I trust him. And these are the arguments that has been quoted in Madhu Lime's book on the cabinet government. A chapter is there, and these are the facts. And he gives a very gives an excellent presentations based on the structured questionnaire and some of the answers that will be that came forward, and he cited it. I'll be citing here that how at that point of time the cabinet functioned, how the cabinet secretariat functioned, and the interference of the Prime Minister office that was quite visible during the Mrs. Gandhi time, and even during the short tenure of Shastri's time, because it was first time who Shastri enacted this administrative change, making the Prime Minister, the Secretary to the Prime Minister, equivalent to the rank of the Cabinet Secretary. So Vidya Shankar was opposed. This was another major change, but nevertheless, he stuck to, the Prime Minister stuck to his Principal Secretary. It was a short tenure government, 2.5 years. Another major change came, and that's again an interesting fact. I'll make a comparison with the British PMO, and we'll see here how the things are between India and the British Prime Minister office. Chaudhry Charan Singh, who was there for hardly 4 to 6 months, he abolished the post of Principal Secretary. And he was told by a retired civil servant that it's better to appoint secretary in the PMO as serving officer, not a retired officer. The trend that had initiated during Mrs. Gandhi's time by appointing Aksar Sahab as the Principal Secretary. This was another major change. When Mrs. Gandhi came back into power in 1980, again she created the post of Principal Secretary, which was already abolished. Again, she created the post of Principal Secretary, and P.C. Alexander was appointed as the Principal Secretary. So this post of the retired people that continued since 71 is going on, despite an attempt by a Prime Minister to abolish the post. Despite an attempt by a non-Congress government to abolish or minimize or lessen the role of the Prime Minister office in the functioning of a essentially cabinet form of government as the Constituent Assembly and the Constitution mandates. Because it was Nehru who primarily shifted from a cabinet form of government to prime ministerial form of government. Of course, he kept the PMO intact in the sense that the rank of the PPS, as I said, was of Joint Secretary rank. But if you make it a comparison with the British PMO, the chief officer there in the British PMO is of Assistant Secretary rank, which is equivalent to Deputy Secretary in India. Here, we had given a Joint Secretary rank officer as PPS during Nehru's time. So Prime Minister Secretariat at that point of time was not so powerful as we understand within the powers. Once Shastri took over, of course, then the Prime Minister office began to delve even into the policy matters. Here, let me say what the allocation of business rules in 1961 says. Number 24, and I quote that allocation of business rules 1961, to provide secretarial assistance to PM. This is the only rule. Again in 2020, serial number 90, as per the allocation of business rules, the PMO has to do the same thing to provide secretarial assistance to Prime Minister. So legally, there is no change from 61 to 2020, except that there is a change in the serial number. In 61, number 24, in 2020, number 90. If you look at the serial order, so PMO, it has to do the similar role to provide secretarial assistance to the Prime Minister. Now, in 64, Sastry empowered the PMO or the PMS at that point of time to initiate policy matters. This was something new. Nehru's PMO or PMS never did this kind of initiating the policy matters. It was the ministry, it was the cabinet secretariat, it was the cabinet that did it. And therefore, I said that the prime ministerial form of government, here I will explain how Nehru initiated towards the prime ministerial form of government. And the memoirs of H.M. Patel, who was one of the first PPS to Nehru in 1946-47, has written in his memoirs, the memoirs of a civil servant. He says that when the cabinet secretary used to take the papers to the Prime Minister Nehru, and what he used to say verbally, there was a wide gap. If some officer comes for orders, some guidance, what exactly is to be done, Prime Minister Nehru used to say something. When the papers were officially put before him, he used to say something else. So the argument was among the civil servants that it takes a lot of wastage of time, paperwork, writing, rewriting. This is on the side of the role of the cabinet secretariat or the cabinet secretary or the other civil servants. Some of the cabinet ministers who were closer to Nehru, without taking the prior approval of the cabinet, used to simply inform the Prime Minister, and the policy was adopted in the cabinet as a part of formality, a part of procedural formality. Whereas, as per the cabinet government, the major policy decisions have to be taken a prior approval from the cabinet. What exactly Morarji Desai tried to emphasize when he became the Prime Minister. So once the cabinet ministers themselves are bypassing the cabinet rules, the rules of the cabinet form of government, and only informing the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister is not against such kind of bypassing the cabinet procedures or the cabinet rules, not in terms of formality, but in terms of the spirit. It means gradually you are giving importance to the personality. You are giving importance to the post, not to the collective, but individual. So the cabinet as collective is getting marginalized, particularly after the death of Patel, and in particular from 52 elections, when he emerges as an independent Prime Minister. Because you remember, Nehru was made the Prime Minister by Gandhi, and it's on record. The way the provincial Congress committees in those years, in 46, 47 and earlier, it was the provincial Congress committees who used to elect the president of the Congress. In 1946, when the election was held to elect the president of the Indian National Congress, the provincial committees elected Sardar Patel to be the president of the Congress, who was to become the Prime Minister of India. None of them voted for Nehru. None. Then Gandhi intervenes, makes him the Prime Minister. Patel dies in 50 December, and then 52 election, and here Nehru emerges with the support of the electorate, the Congress party, and of course, the kind of legacy that Indian National Congress had during the freedom struggle as a prime minister. And subsequently again in 57 and again in 62. So what he was doing, either on the foreign policy matters, in the policy matters, in the cabinet, people rarely contested him the way Patel used to contest him when he was trying to make prime minister as all prime ministerial form of government in 47, 48. There is a long arguments and the letters that's going on between Nehru and Patel that we are all familiar with. But now there is no Patel to contest this prime ministerial form of government. So therefore I state and I maintain that it was Nehru who begins this process of prime ministerial form of government, and therefore gradually, even during Nehru's time, the PMO remained reticent, but subsequently, and remember, Shastri in 64 was a minister without portfolio who was looking after the prime minister's secretariat as well and the cabinet secretariat as well, because Nehru was getting ill, tired, and Shastri was looking at the functioning of the prime minister's secretariat, cabinet secretariat, and the prime minister himself very closely. Everyday interactions. So once he himself becomes the prime minister in 64, he begins to follow that procedure that he did in 64 by empowering the prime minister, changing the nomenclature of his PPS to secretary, making him equivalent to the cabinet secretary rank officer, etc., etc. And then empowering him to initiate the policy decisions and each and everything that the prime minister requires. And therefore, if I remember correctly, in N.K. Singh's book Portrait of Power, he writes that now the letter coming from, or the files coming from the cabinet secretariat or the ministries, is sent to the joint secretary rank to be put up before the secretary, and the prime minister. The last note to be read by the prime minister is of secretary of the PMS, not of the cabinet secretary. This was a remarkable difference, and these are all part of the public domains. So this kind of change, major change, was reversed when Morarji Desai took over as the prime minister. So this policy unit was dismantled, and this is in the Madhu's Lime book, etc., that I said about. This was one major change. Tenure of most of the non-Congress prime ministers, except for Vajpayee and Prime Minister Modi, who has spent this 7 years and the 6 years, has been of hardly 11 months. Prime Minister Inder Gujral, 11 months. Prime Minister VP Singh, almost 11 months to 1 year. Prime Minister Chandrasekhar, hardly 4 months to 6 months, etc. But nevertheless, the Prime Minister office in these years have been more democratic in its functioning, not trying to or seeking control over other ministries, not unnecessarily interfering in other ministries, because the prime minister himself has been chosen by the coalition of parties. Whether Deve Gowda, he didn't went to the electorate as a prime ministerial candidate, the way Prime Minister Vajpayee went to, elected by the party to be the prime ministerial candidate, the way Prime Minister Modi went and chosen by the party to be prime ministerial candidate, and the electorate supported him or supported them. This kind of electoral, direct electoral support, the way the presidential elections are held in America was never during the non-Congress governments. So therefore, and here let me reflect on one aspect, that Prime Minister Office or Prime Minister Secretariat broadly reflects the political stature of the Prime Minister. And therefore you find that these non-Congress governments, with the support of the coalition, became the governments ran, and the Prime Minister was chosen by the coalition partners or with the support of the coalition partners. Now let me come to the tenure of Prime Minister Vajpayee. The largest party, I'm talking about not 96, where he was Prime Minister for 13 days. Some of the contentious issues which was close to the BJP, and that was left aside for the moment. And therefore, with the coalitions was formed, and the Prime Minister Vajpayee came into power as Prime Minister. For 6 years he was there. There were restrictions. Coalition politics itself is a restriction in running the government. It's a challenge. Those who have been part of the power, they know very well, whether part of the party or in the government or in the bureaucracy who have been closer to the Prime Minister. Running a coalition government, or particularly with the contradictory interests, regional interest versus the national interests. So such kind of contestations, the Prime Minister has to, or the government has to take into account these kinds of conflicts of interest. And still with, if I remember correctly, 22 parties were successfully run by Prime Minister Vajpayee running the government. A salute to him. Because the mechanism that was devised was something very new at the federal level. The way the CPM government had run in Bengal, with the taking into account the different constituents, that was a lesson to be learned and partly adopted. Co-opting, coordinating, talking to each other, solving the contentious issue or keeping them at the margin for the moment. That's how the government was formed, and it was taken care of for 6 years. Here we find that in the PMO, a new element is introduced. The Principal Secretary, who also becomes the National Security Advisor, NSA. First time a post was created of National Security Advisor, and one man was combining two: the National Security Advisor post and the Principal Secretary post. And he was given the rank of Minister of State. So two elements were introduced here by Vajpayee government. And of course, the powers were which ministry is to look after, to be taken care of. This was, and finally, when Prime Minister Modi took over, we find that the rank of the Principal Secretary was raised to the rank of the Cabinet Minister, or the rank of the Cabinet. This was another new element introduced by the government. Now, my second part of the paper is, this is the historical trajectory since 77 that I have presented.
10 minutes.
10 minutes.
Yeah, no, 35, because we have to close.
What exactly is the function of the Prime Minister? The way the chair said, very curious. We all are curious that how Prime Minister office operates. What exactly is the Prime Minister office? And now let me discuss here slightly. The There are 5 sections in the Prime Minister office. And again, this is on the public domain. Economic and social, 1. This is 1 section headed by a section officer. The second is economic and social 2, again headed by a section officer. So each section being headed by a section officer. Then we have a deputy secretaries and the directors and the joint secretaries, and again that procedure. And let's keep it in mind here that the principal secretary, a retired officer, he's not part of that official hierarchy in that way. He's a retired officer. The way Aksar Sahab retired, and then as a secretary he retired, and then he was appointed as a principal secretary. So a retired officer who heads the post of the principal secretary. The third section is political 1, and the fourth section is political 2. All these sections, the 4 sections, deal with the different ministries, the embassies, the letter comes, or some foreign heads and states who write letters to the Prime Minister office. So these different sections head this, comes under their purview. And the last one, which is the most important, is the section is called not to go out. This is confidential. Here, just to say or share that some of the papers regarding Netaji is with this kind of confidential paper are lying with the Prime Minister office. So this is called not to go out. These are 5 sections. Now, how it functions? Suppose the Prime Minister goes to Leh, and some program is to be, some policy is to be initiated, that some developmental works is to be initiated. And he comes back, he promises, some politicians comes, the local people come and they seek to have a construction of tunnel here that will benefit us. And the Prime Minister agrees. So he comes back to Delhi, he suggests to his principal secretary that the proposal has to be initiated. So the Ministry of Road or Transport, they will be informally asked, and the proposal comes from the ministry. So PMO seeks from the ministry concerned a proposal or some clarifications. This is one work that they do. Then the second work is that the ministry seeks some clarification from the Prime Minister office. And then when the file comes, a photocopy of that file is taken care of. That's called ghost file or parallel file or shadow file. And whatever the decisions are taken, that is taken on the ghost files, not on the file that comes from the ministries. This file, which is within the Prime Minister office, this also acts as an institutional memory. It's an office of record. So Prime Minister office also acts as office of records or known for institutional memory. So once again, suppose after 2 months or 6 months or 8 months or after 2 years, once again, if the file comes from the road ministry, road transport ministry, that the tunnel has been developed or another proposal is there. So the Prime Minister office, again, this file from the Ministry of Road, which was a photocopy of the original file, which has been kept there in the Prime Minister office, is taken out from the vault. Again, whatever the development, the notes, the decisions are taken, that will be written on that ghost files. And then the decision, the order is, or the suggestion is converted. If the Prime Minister's signature is to be there on the file, on the official file which comes from the ministry, the Prime Minister will put his signature. If it is to be sent to the President for the signature, it will be sent to the President for the signature. But the decisions, the notes, etc., which are usually written on the files, those are not written on the official files that comes from the ministry. It's written on a file created by the Prime Minister office, a photocopy of the original, and whatever the decisions that's taken, the notes that's taken on the photocopy file. And this acts as a office of record or a institutional memory. So many of the confidential files as well, or many of the developments that one has to look into for an academic work or for any book writing for the historians or academicians, if this kind of unclassification takes place, that will be a great service to the academic works. Many of the confidential papers which are still there, that not which is concerned with the security of the state, no. The things which is concerned with the security of the state, that should remain confidential, but those which are not concerned with the security of the state, if that can be made to the public, that will be a great service for the knowledge domain and the knowledge society. The third part, and with this I'll conclude, if you give me another 2 to 3 minutes.
We have a few minutes.
That why this kind of society PMO we have in India, why can't we have, if you make a comparison with the British PMO, in the last 74, 76 years, there has been no major change in the British PMO. In 70s and 60s, the Prime Minister kept on trying to include a lady in his Prime Minister office to look after the letters of his constituency for developmental works. There was a huge opposition and a huge shouting going on in the media. The change came, and a minor change came during Mrs. Thatcher's time. She appointed chief of a staff, made her the executive authority. Once she left, it was dismantled, the power was curtailed. Again, Tony Blair comes, again appoints chief of a staff, which means which has the power over cabinet secretary. In Britain, I'm talking about. Once he leaves, Tony Blair, in 2007, again that is dismantled. There is nothing like chief of a staff at that point of time who had the power over the cabinet secretary. And since 2007, we find that that status quo that was in 60s or 70s, almost that remains. Here in India, we find that the PMO has always been, or PMS, from the nomenclature, ranks, perks, strength, have been changing constantly. And with it, I submit for your any questions, etc.
Thank you, Dr. Roy. It was an extremely brilliant lecture, and now somehow I'm trying to remember that what prevented me attending his first lecture, and certainly I'm going back to the website and hear that again. It's a remarkable insight how the things happen. And before I put in 1 or 2 points, I would like the audience to come in first, because I can always misuse my position as a chair at the moment.
Or you can initiate a question.
So, but I would like the audience first to come in, please.
May I ask a question? I am Nandini Bhattacharya Panda.
Welcome, ma'am.
No, it is just a very simple question. This is a very interesting paper, actually, very rich and interesting. I just want to know, ask you that you have made comparison mostly with UK and to some extent with US. Why don't you consider comparing our constitution and our prime ministership or headship with the situation in an ex-colonial country.
Australia and Canada I'm doing, just to inform you here, to make it here public, that I'm taking into account the development in Canada, the Prime Minister office in Canada and the Prime Minister office in Australia, and then the PMO, etc. that they have. I have still to finish this work, part of the, Tin Murthy and the research project that we have to present the papers. So once it is finished and submitted, Canada and Australia will be taken care of for a comparative study.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your suggestion as well.
Okay.
जी, मैं एक प्रश्न पूछ सकता हूँ सर?
हाँ, प्लीज शुक्ला जी।
सर, मैं बीच में आता जाता रहा था, इसलिए हो सकता है आपने इसका उत्तर बताया हो, लेकिन चूंकि मुझे पता नहीं चला इसलिए मैं पूछ रहा हूँ। जब आप ये बता रहे थे कि जो
ज्यादा चांसेस है कह देंगे प्रश्न का जवाब न देना पड़े, इसलिए कह दें कि आप उस समय कहीं चले गए थे। हम बता चुके हैं।
तो मैं ये पूछना चाह रहा था कि जब आप ये कह रहे थे कि जो छोटे छोटे काल के प्रधानमंत्री थे, तो उस समय चूंकि कोलिशन गवर्नमेंट थी तो बहुत ज्यादा पीएमओ इंटरवीन नहीं करता था अन्य प्राइम मिनिस्टर्स से। तो उस समय मेरे दिमाग में ये बात आई कि इंदिरा गांधी काल के प्राइम मिनिस्टर जो ऑफिस था मनमोहन सिंह का, पहले तो इंदिरा गांधी काल के और मनमोहन सिंह का जो प्राइम मिनिस्टर काल था, इन दोनों के बीच में कोई डिफरेंस अगर आप देख पाते हो, खासकर इंटरवेंशन के मामले में अन्य कैबिनेट मंत्री में, और इनकी तुलना में आज का जो मोदी कैबिनेट है 6 साल का, तो उन दोनों के बीच में अगर कहीं कुछ आप कम से कम इंटरवेंशन के मामले में किस तरह से क्या
शुक्ला जी, आपके ऑफिस ने ऑर्डर किया है कि 3:45 पे हमको ये हाल खाली करना है, तो प्रश्न का लंबाई उतनी रखिए।
बस हो गया खत्म।
एक्चुअली हम सभी जानते हैं, फेमिलियर हैं, संजय बारू साहब की जो किताब आई थी और उसमें जो उन्होंने पूरा एक चैप्टर लिखा है प्राइम मिनिस्टर के ऊपर में, जिसमें जो डोमेन कॉन्फ्लिक्ट था, क्योंकि 2 तरह के नेशनल सिक्योरिटी एडवाइजर अपॉइंट किए गए थे वहां पे, अगर आपको याद होगा तो, एक इंटरनल सिक्योरिटी के लिए और एक एक्सटर्नल सिक्योरिटी के लिए, और शुरू में काफी ये कॉन्फ्लिक्ट था। और प्रिंसिपल सेक्रेटरी जो टीके नायर थे उस समय, तो ये एक तो डोमेन कॉन्फ्लिक्ट था और ये काफी मीडिया में कॉन्फ्लिक्ट में भी रहा। बाद में संजय बारू साहब ने तो इसको सारा खुल के किताब में लिख ही दिया था। वो कॉन्फ्लिक्ट मोदी गवर्नमेंट में नहीं है। इट्स ए वेरी कोहेसिव, वेरी एफिशिएंट प्राइम मिनिस्टर ऑफिस एंड वेरी लो, मतलब मीडिया आप जो भी जानने की कोशिश करे, बट वो हाई फ्लॉन्ट जो होता है या वो लो रिटाइसेंट काम का, चुपचाप साइलेंटली काम करना है हमें। उसमें कॉन्फ्लिक्ट था डोमेन का कि पावर किसके पास कौन सा होगा, वो चीजें काफी झलक रही थी। एक तो ये था। दूसरा था कि जो कोलिशन के अपने कंपल्सन्स थे, क्योंकि हम देख रहे थे कि कांग्रेस को अपना बहुमत नहीं था, जैसे पिछले 2014 से है, और इसका बहुत फर्क पड़ता है। इफ ए प्राइम मिनिस्टर सपोर्टेड बाय द electorate comes with absolute majority 274 plus, whether 280, 283 and then 303 plus, अगर इस बहुमत से आ रही है और इसके बावजूद भी कोलिशन बना रहा है, सबको साथ लेकर चल रहा है, डिफरेंट कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंट्स को, ये नहीं कि हम अब सत्ता में आ गए हैं अकेले अपने पार्टी के बलबूते पे तो हम दूसरे को बाहर निकाल दे, ये नहीं, सबको साथ लेकर चलने की कोशिश कर रहा है। तो वैसे केस में कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट या फिर वो सवाल नहीं उठता है, जो कोलिशन पॉलिटिक्स में मनमोहन सिंह जी के टाइम में था। और उसका नतीजा हम देखते हैं कि कैबिनेट फॉर्मेशन पे, फंक्शनिंग ऑफ द कैबिनेट पे, और एक ब्रॉड रिफ्लेक्शन विद इन द पीएमओ भी था। और संजय बारू साहब तो खुल के उसको पब्लिक डोमेन में ले आए हैं, जिस तरीके से चल रहा था।
We are already 3:47. I think I can take one more question from audience before I close it. I hope all of you understand the time constraint, because I would like to sit here till 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the evening, but we will be kicked out in few minutes. Any other question, please?
Sir, can I ask you? Sir, can I ask? Yeah, sir. First of all, it's actually excellent. I mean, the way you presented, and all of us has learned something. The question which I want to ask you is a simple question: that how to make our PMO more democratic? I mean, like you already said that non-Congress you are talking about. So how to make the PMO more democratic? This is a very simple question. Thank you, sir.
The strength of Prime Minister Modi is that he tries to be transparent in his functioning, even in administrative functioning. If you look at the sites, and this is in public domain, you click the site Cabinet Secretariat, you click the site on the Google Prime Minister Office, and entire things comes out, where you have to make a complaint regarding what, where you can give a suggestion. So if you want to give any suggestion regarding any problems that you are facing in your constituency or regarding the country, it's most welcome. So I think he has taken account of this public suggestions time and again, and then he is tech savvy, so he is on Twitter as well. You can attach him, put your suggestions there. Here, as far as the hierarchy is concerned of the Prime Minister office, let me tell you, many of the policies is of the Niti Aayog. Many of the policies are formulated by the parties and Niti Aayog. It takes into account in the policy making of the government. This is another aspect. So the way the policy unit was dismantled by Morarji Desai government, and vis-a-vis in reaction to the infamous PMO during the emergency, such kind of situations, I think he is sensitive enough to take into account such kinds of distortions that crops into the PMO. But hierarchy, as far as official part is concerned, only the numbers can be reduced if possible. Otherwise, I don't find any problem with the hierarchy. That simply cannot be done away with.
Thank you, Dr. Roy. With this, I am sorry I need to close the questions from audience, because just 1 or 2 minutes I need give a formal thank to this excellent lecture, and all of you have praised it, so I don't want to spend more time on praising it. But there are a couple of things in a minute I would like to strengthen what Dr. Roy said. Till I started writing my book called Secular Politics, Communal Agenda, everywhere I have been reading that Jawaharlal Nehru was elected, inverted comma, elected unopposed. When I started looking at the documents, I found that 29th April 1946 is the last date for the election of Congress president, and by that time it was very clear whoever becomes the Congress president, he will take the oath of Prime Minister of India. Only Pradesh Congress committees are authorized to elect the Prime Minister or President of the Congress at that time. At that time in government in India, there were 15 Congress committees. 12 nominated Sardar Patel, 3 abstained. No other nominations were there, meaning thereby Sardar Patel, had not Gandhi intervened and pushed Sardar Patel out, Sardar Patel would have been the first Prime Minister of this country. Full stop there. Secondly, it may disturb a bit what Dr. Roy has rightly pointed out, that Jawaharlal Nehru had a grand plan for grand PMO, this and that and all that. And 1929 article, as I look at myself, you read, we had read that in intermediate, where he depicts himself as a king moving on a very big procession, this and that and all. What you find is, I find Jawaharlal Nehru a great consummate politician, not as a great what you call democrat. a consummate politician. It may hurt somebody to hear this, but just look at this point. 1947, Jawaharlal Nehru takes oath. Sardar Patel, 15 December 1950, gone. Come 1957, within 10 years, most of the freedom fighters find no place in Nehru's cabinet. They are all out. Whether it was Rajaji, whether it is Lohia, whether it is Sardar Patel, JP, whether it is Ambedkar, all of them who could raise their voice against him, they were out. So we have to start looking the whole thing at afresh. And one thing beautifully, I'm so happy that you pointed out, we in India are always enamored with great titles, great position. You know, I had the privilege of living in Cambridge University for long enough. In Britain, is still the chief of police of entire Britain is called head constable. He's not called Director General of Police, this and that, nothing, head constable. Like in India, it was, I come from UP, I know that last IG, Inspector General of Police, was Aslam Ahmad, Dumpy Ahmad's father. But we keep changing. Now districts have DIGs and regions have IGs, commissionaries. So we keep changing, and with each change, the amount of goodness we think will come, it goes in reverse order. But nevertheless, sir, it was a great lecture, and I tell you, for me, it has been a great pleasure to be part of this lecture. Besides, this lecture is not something I would like to use, but part of this lecture, it was great. And I wish that it's going to be a great book.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much for joining here.